Great. Thank you, Betsy. So good morning, everyone, and happy Friday the 13th. Hopefully today's session will run smoothly and we won't be sorry that we selected such an ominous date for our workshop. I'm Mayor Schulman with the Hartford Foundation's Nonprofit Support Program, and I want to welcome you all to today's session on staff retention in a new environment. Many of your organizations participated in the 2022 Connecticut State of the Sector survey earlier this year. Thank you. And that survey includes some sections on staff recruitment and retention that you might be interested in reviewing. So we will be sending you the link to the survey in the email that you'll get following today's workshop. And because it's a question that always comes up, the follow-up email will also include a link to the PowerPoint slides and the session recording. We recognize that effective staff retention is really rooted in good staff recruitment. So to that end, we will be offering a workshop with one of our presenters' colleagues on the topic of staff recruitment on May 23rd from 10 to 12. And you're welcome to register for that workshop if you're interested. We'll include that in the follow-up email as well. So if you have a chance and you know how to sort of rename yourself in your Zoom square with your first name and your organization, that would be great, just so we kind of know, who's with which organization. Special thanks as always to my wonderful NSP colleagues, Monica Kelly and Betsy Johnson, for all of their behind the scenes assistance and great teamwork in planning for and managing the logistics for today's session. So Betsy will be posting the survey for this session in the chat towards the end, and then you'll also get it in the email that we'll send you. It's the only price of admission, and we really do value your feedback and read all of your comments. So please just take a couple of minutes and complete that survey. So as advertised, this session is designed to be kind of an interactive workshop. So we'll have a bunch of polls and there'll be a breakout discussion. So to the extent possible, if you can keep your cameras on, that would be great. And we think you'll get more out of the session if you engage and ask your questions, which you can do at any time during the session. Our presenter encourages questions, and we'll be monitoring the chat closely. So just type away and enter your questions. Lisa, our presenter, will also be sticking around for a few minutes after the session. So if you have any lingering questions that we haven't gotten to, just stick around for a few minutes at the end. So I'm delighted that our presenter today is Lisa Johnson, who is Vice President of Training and Development Services at Operations, Inc. Lisa delivers training programs to a variety of clients in topics like performance management, sexual harassment prevention and awareness, diversity and sensitivity, and professional and leadership development. Lisa has more than 30 years of experience in the HR field, and she's worked with both nonprofit as well as for-profit clients. So that's it for me, and I will turn it over to you, Lisa.
Mayor, I have to say, when you said over 30 years, it hit me like a dagger. I don't like that in my bio anymore. Let's take that out.
Okay.
That's not a nice statement. What? Okay, welcome. Thank you all so much. So just a little housekeeping, I guess, just explanation, 2 things for you. I have 3 screens, which seems like a lot, but it feels necessary. And you're all up here. So if you see me like with my eyes kind of up here, that's because I'm looking at all of you. So everybody give me some jazz hands so I can see you all. And do you know that this counts as steps? It's cheating. I will acknowledge that, but it works on your wrist. So if we do this a couple of times, it's just because, I'm feeling like I haven't moved. So you're all up there for me, and I will glance there, and I will do my best to keep you on my screen. The other thing, I mentioned this to the folks as we were starting, I'm in the middle of a bathroom renovation, and so I think I can hear the noise. I hope you can't hear the noise. And if you hear something like that, it's just a bathtub being thrown out the window or something like that. So that's just there. I think we'll be okay, though. I tested it out yesterday when they were here with some of my coworkers, and we should be fine. Welcome. Thank you. For those of you who are just joining or haven't had the opportunity to do so yet, go ahead and put it in the chat. Let me know where you're sitting. I'm in Fairfield, Connecticut, in my basement. I'd love to hear where all of you are. I see some of you are in office settings, so that's fantastic. And we'll talk a little bit later about the hybrid world and the remote world as well, because it absolutely is a topic in terms of this retention environment and the environment that we're in today. So the course is called Retention Strategies in a New Environment. New meaning post-COVID or mid-COVID. I don't know if we're post yet. It doesn't feel that way. And so we're going to talk about some of the things that are in our current environment right now. What are the hot topics? My name is Lisa Johnson, and I'm the Vice President of Training and Development Services for Operations, Inc. We're a human resources consulting firm. We're located in Norwalk, Connecticut. And I'm not going to tell you how long I've been doing training like this, but I've been at Operations, Inc. for 10 years. Prior to that, I worked for Cablevision here in Southwestern Connecticut, and I worked there for 20-something years. So I guess you could do the math. There we go. Just a little bit of our training reminders. You're going to use the chat feature. You can also unmute. I like to hear other voices other than my own at some point today. That would be amazing. And the last bullet point here is pretty important. So I have content for all of you today. I made some good guesses about what you want to hear about, but I'm going to encourage all of you to participate fully. Turn your phones off. Take this moment to really be engaged, ask your questions, share your stories, share your experiences. They're really important and they are appreciated. We can go through this, this is fine. So let's get started. We only have an hour and a half, and I want to make sure we get through all of the information. Here are the things we're going to talk about today. The case for retention. Why is it important? You'll tell me why you think it's important, and I'll share some information why I think it's important. We'll talk about some workforce trends, the challenges. Again, that's going to be a share moment where you all are going to tell me what your particular challenges are. Why do people leave? So start your mind thinking about why people leave. And that's not just a throwaway question. That's really a question that is meant to be very thought-provoking and self-reflective as a leader, self-reflective as an organization. So why do people leave? And then the next question is even more important, which is why do people stay? Okay, so get your mind focused on that. Strategies for keeping people. And then last, we'll do some breakout sessions with some best practices. Okay, so the business case for employee retention. Why should organizations care? What is the cost to an organization for losing employees? And this is the participation part. So again, in the chat, or go ahead and unmute, and I'll look at my screen to see who wants to speak, and let's get that conversation going. Why should we care about retention?
So, I think if you are able to retain employees, you don't have to constantly keep training new folks, and then you have more skilled, better trained folks doing the work.
Yeah, so Janet, I'm hearing in your voice, the very first thing that you said was, we don't have to keep training new employees. It sounds exhausting, right? So yeah, so always feeling like you're behind the 8 ball, always feeling like you have to catch up to get someone up to speed, quote unquote, right? That's very challenging. And all of what you said after that is important too, but I want to focus on that because that has a multiplying effect. It's not just you focused on training the new person or someone in your organization focused on training that new person. It's the effort and the work that you're not doing because you're training that new person, and the ramp up time of all of that. And so it affects more than just you and the person you're training, it affects everyone else. And so that's so important. We're here in the chat and a lot of you have a lot of great answers, but I see Erica might have taken her mute button off. Erica, did you want to say something?
Oh, I added it into chat along with the training and all that. I think the relationship with your customer is really important. They don't like constant change, just like we don't.
Yeah, so absolutely. We're building relationships with clients, customers, consultants, vendors, board members. We're building those relationships, and with the change comes that lack of trust, lack of connection, lack of history. So I love this one. Heather says in the chat, loss of organizational knowledge and history. That goes a long way, when you don't have to explain something because we already know how we got to where we are with that client or whoever we're working with. Again, retaining historical knowledge is a cost of training. A reflection on the agency's reputation. Boy, is that important, right? So it's about who you are as an organization and what others see. So if there's a lot of turnover, the question's going to be, what are they doing wrong over there? And can I really trust them? That word trust is going to come into play again. Absolutely. And, we can think about that on the flip side in just a moment. So hold on to that. Having to retrain is costly. It has a negative effect on quality. Yes. Indicators of successful operations. We will be saving time, we'll be saving energy. Again, that institutional knowledge. Hiring and onboarding takes time and energy. And I'm going to tell you this, Larissa, this is a great thought. And we're going to talk about onboarding because retention and onboarding go hand in hand. And there is study after study after study that says that organizations that do a really exceptional job onboarding their employees have a higher retention rate of those employees. So if we are constantly onboarding new people because we're replacing, we might not do as good a job because we feel like we're always doing that. And we have to really focus on the onboarding process. I love this one, Melanie. Staff morale, huge consideration. It's not that measurable necessarily. Sometimes people like, the cost and we want to know numbers associated with it. Morale is hard to gauge. It doesn't have a number associated with it. We also have that higher workload for those who are left behind. And then that's a whole snowball effect. They're working harder. They're working longer hours. They're picking up the slack. They're feeling overworked and stressed and overwhelmed. And then their best isn't able to be presented and they're not working at their best level. Customer likes the long-term relationships, stabilization within the program. A lot of times wisdom and knowledge leave with them, yes. Staff morale, and you lose continuity. Great answers, everyone, and I really appreciate you participating. So thank you for that. You've said it all, but I'm going to show you it here on my screen. When employees leave, you need to spend money and resources hiring their replacements. When employees leave, those left behind often feel overburdened, overstretched, stressed. When employees leave, it affects those that stay. Morale, culture, branding, publicity. When employees are given reasons to stay, what does that buy you? Now, I know many of you were just going to say it buys you all the reverse of all the things we just said, but can we add to that? What are the benefits of having employees stay? And you don't have to repeat all the opposites, but can you think of something else? This reads like If You Give a Mouse a Cookie book. I don't know if anyone knows that series, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. But this is how this reads. So when employees stay, I love this. They become a partner. They become an advocate. They become a voice. Yes. Potential growth within the organization. I love that. For growth within the organization. So the person themselves has the potential for that growth. Loyalty is such a great word. It goes hand in hand with that trust word that I had earlier. They feel valuable. Absolutely. Stability in our programs. I love this. You save money. That's the bottom line here. It could lead to stronger, more productive workforce. This is great. This is that publicity culture branding. It attracts other personnel. Yeah, it's a good place to work. We're able to build stronger relationships, more opportunities for continuous improvement and of practices, programs, and services. These are great answers. So we all know that it's important. I don't even think you needed me to tell you all of that, but we're going to go ahead and open our first poll, and you're all going to get the right answer. So go ahead, and the poll will appear on your screen. Go ahead and give me an answer there. I can't wait to get 100% participated and 100% in one answer. So we're at 91% of you participating. Let's get it to 100. That was a tough question, Andre. I hear you. This was real. Listen, I have to start off easy. We got to ease into stuff like this. It's early. It's Friday. We're good at 95. We can go ahead and share those results. Listen, better customer experience, morale improvement, increased productivity, improved culture. The really hard answer, all of the above. Absolutely, this is what we're looking at here today. So keep all of this in mind as we go throughout. You're going to want to make sure that we're focused on the things that matter to us. Every organization has a different focus, and maybe your mission and your values are already strong enough to hold programs, and your history is already there. And so maybe it's some of these other answers that you have to focus on. So we need to tailor this in your own mind as to what works for all of you. So I have this wheel here that's describing the business case for retention. So if we take our focus now away from just the big global world of retention, I'm talking to all of you who are in nonprofit organizations. Your focus is a little different than a corporation, than a for-profit business. And some of the little cogs on this wheel are very focused towards for-profit. So number 9 says increased revenue, right? Take a look at this wheel and tell me what is resonating for all of you. Where are the hits for you? Where are the big wins? Where are the places that you can really see your organization spending some time and focus on when we're thinking about retaining our talent? Cost reduction and increased revenue. Okay, thank you. I love this one. We want to have those experienced employees. We want to grow that part of it and have people who are experienced. Improved employee satisfaction. I love that you picked that one out, Kelly. Improved employee satisfaction has such a multiplying effect. When your employees are satisfied, those that they service, customers, I'll use that term, whether it be internal customers or external customers, are also satisfied. And then that leads to that end result, right? So whatever it is, if it's revenue, if it's program adoption, if it's, success in the programs, things like that, that has a multiplied effect. Morale improvement, very similar there. Again, morale improvement, lots of that we're getting here. Increased productivity. So let's talk about that in the nonprofit world. Why is increased productivity so important?
In nonprofit, we have such limited resources, and we really rely on people to do so much with less. So as soon as productivity goes down, it has a really negative effect on everything.
Yes. So absolutely, Jessica, I'm hearing what you're saying. It's like, because we're working with so little in the nonprofit sector, the impact is immediate. The impact is harsh, right? So the person who's taking the more on really feels it because they're already overworked to begin with. And so if they have to take on more, it's really, it could really be detrimental. So absolutely, that's so important. Someone here says, I'm big on productivity. Thank you, Aaron. Improved employee satisfaction equals improved customer satisfaction. I 100% agree with that. Steve just wants to cut to the chase. And Steve says, Lisa, they are all important. We don't have to talk about all of them. We know they're all important. I like this one, recruitment and training efficacy. So what do we mean by that? Stephanie, I'm putting you on the spot if you want to chime in and let us know what you're talking about there, what your experience is there.
I think it's twofold. I think, really being strategic and hiring appropriate people for the positions, and then really having a good onboarding training policy. Without those two things, staff generally aren't happy and aren't going to be productive if they don't know what their job responsibilities are.
Yeah. And this is a highlight right now in our current environment when we have people who are either hybrid or remote. It was a little easier onboarding people and getting people trained and up to speed in our culture when we were in an office environment all together. But with the move to people being hybrid remote, even if they're in the office, it's still not the same experience if others are not there. So really important there. We got a lot of morale improvement here. Experienced employees, some of you are chiming in. Improved culture. Again, the fear in this environment today in our world is that culture is taking a hit in organizations because we're not together, because we're not doing some of the things that we used to do to create that culture. So we definitely have to shine a light on that. Someone says, I didn't realize how important improved culture was. And in some organizations it is, Aaron. And, the idea here is maybe your culture is really strong already. And so you're not seeing that. But for some organizations where that's an important fact, or they've seen an impact, or they're feeling, sometimes organizations are in a growth spurt and culture is shifting a little bit because of that. So you might see things like that happening where it becomes more of a focus. Demand keeps going up, not a lot of staff. Yes, yes, yes. Funders look for high productivity. Agreed with all of that. Yes. So this is a nice wheel. We definitely want to focus on it. There are 10 here. I think you all came up with a few more and emphasized these really nicely. So we want to talk about some trends in the workforce. And we're going to open up poll number 2, which is going to ask you a question around this term, the Great Resignation. The Great Resignation. I probably shouldn't have made this one a poll, and I should have asked you all to give me jazz hands if you've heard of it, because we just need to get our steps in. The Great Resignation. So some of you have heard of it. Some of you have not. So post-COVID, and some will argue that the Great Resignation actually started before COVID and wasn't necessarily COVID related, but COVID accelerated it. And you can go ahead and share the results of the poll. The Great Resignation is speaking to the fact that we have seen so many people resign from their jobs post-COVID. And really what we're talking about here is, so something like 42 million Americans quit their jobs since the spring of 2021. I don't think that it's people quitting jobs and not working, right? It's not people are off the grid now and living in their tiny home somewhere. That's not really what we're seeing. And so I like this term. It's not really the Great Resignation, it's the Great Renegotiation. What are your thoughts on that? What do you think we mean by that? what are people's concerns? Yeah, go ahead, Shannon.
I think from what I've seen, people are leaving positions that don't align with their values and what they like are interested in. I feel like when a lot of places went remote or started offering flexible schedules, people realized that this 9 to 5 office style job wasn't working for everybody anymore, and maybe it wasn't the way that we're going to do it for the rest of our lives. So I think with COVID, a lot of flexibility opened up, and people are leaving those older jobs and finding careers and positions that sort of work for them as a person instead of just giving them a salary.
Yeah. And, I'm going to say this and maybe, I hope I don't offend anyone, but the younger generations who are coming into the workforce already had this figured out, already knew that being in an office from 9 to 5 chained to their desk wasn't what they wanted to do. They also figured out that they wanted to work someplace where they felt like they were making a difference, where they felt like there was some reason for this organization, for them being there, and they wanted to make an impact and things like that. And I think COVID just extended that to others. Certainly the part about, I can be productive no matter where I am. And I don't have to spend an hour in the car commuting to get to the place where I could be productive. I could be productive where I am. And I can answer emails at 8 o'clock at night instead of 10 o'clock in the morning. COVID forced us to look at how we were working. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the COVID area, but absolutely it had to do with it, but it has much more to do with people examining how they want to function. And a lot of you are saying it in the chat here, flexibility. I'm seeing flexibility over and over again. I'm seeing the term work-life balance. We've always heard about work-life balance. It's been in our vernacular, for years and years and years, but we were sort of just talking the talk and making small changes to fix that. But once everybody was forced home, we really understood what it could be. Someone here says our most productive hours may not be from 9 to 5 chained to a desk in a certain location. I agree with that. Erin posted a really great article here, so I'm going to take a look at that. Thank you for doing that. It's called The Great Midlife Crisis. Kelly, you got your hand raised. What you got for us?
Yeah, so I think obviously, like when I hear the term great renegotiation, thinking about people wanting more flexibility and options, and maybe this is related, but I think in addition to that, we have people that are choosing to retire a little bit earlier. And I think coming out of that it's kind of different than when you have people looking for more options and then also kind of losing some staff a few years before a planned retirement. It's kind of somewhat different reasons, but hard to deal with both. And that feels a little different than just being able to offer some flexibility when they're like, nope, like I'm leaving at 62.
No, that's exactly true. And to go along with that, so it's not really just people in the workforce staying in the workforce, but looking for something better. These people are leaving. We also had dual income families during the pandemic that maybe were forced to go to a single income because of childcare issues, because of health issues, not wanting to be out in the workforce. And they realized that they could actually swing it. And so life was better that way. And so they decided not to re-enter the workforce after all of that. So I think you're onto something there. And that's a similar kind of complexity to it all, right? Yeah, so people are looking for that work-life balance for sure. They want that flexibility. They want more pay, someone says here. People also want more pay. I'm going to have a slide later here that says, let's leave pay out of it, because for many of you in your nonprofit world, our hands are tied there. And so we need to be a little bit more creative in how we get people to stay. I honestly think that the cards are in your favor right now. When we talk about people wanting to work for a purpose, to feel like they're making an impact, to have flexibility, if we can think creatively, and maybe you all already were doing that because you didn't have the budget to give people money and to be quote unquote competitive in that realm, you might be ahead of the game already because you are used to offering those kinds of things that people are looking for. Someone here says, I feel flexibility is important, but that needs to be earned. With a small staff, you cannot have people dropping the ball. It's hard to offer that right off the bat to a new employee when you don't know their work ethic. I agree with you to a certain degree. This goes back to the idea of recruiting. And so my colleague Ty is going to do a session on getting the right people in the door. And so the recruiting effort becomes so important, of making sure that, we know that you're starting with this person right off the bat and they're new, but if we do a good job recruiting them, we're going to have a certain level of trust that we can let them have some flexibility right off the bat. Maybe not full, maybe not like the employee that's been with you for 15 years, but you'll feel a little bit more comfortable knowing who they are if you do a good job with the recruitment. So let's talk about why people leave. Why are people leaving their jobs?
Hey, Lisa, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Janet has her hand up. Question?
Yes. I just wanted a comment, or maybe a comment and a question. So definitely, it's been a challenge when our organization was probably one of the few that has remained open through COVID. We never shut down, not even for 2 weeks. We kept operating. We changed the way we delivered service, but we kept operating, we kept serving, we kept, when other organizations went to remote work, it was difficult to try and keep staff motivated to keep coming back every day. And answering that question, well, why are we still here? Well, why are we still open? Well, doesn't anyone care if we get sick? Or, trying to keep people wanting, to come back. So really trying to brainstorm, and I definitely want to learn and hear about ways to continue to create that work-life balance and that flexibility, because people are really tired, especially if they never had that opportunity to see what it's like to work from home or, have that time. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that.
Janet, you are raising such a great point here. So for those of you, someone's agreeing with you. Many of you never left. Many of you are like, hybrid, remote, what are you talking about? I have been in this office at my job, managing my folks forever. We did not get a break. We did not. And boy, and a lot of you are echoing here in the chat. Yeah. So thank you so much for bringing that up. And I'm gonna be 100% honest here. You got a hard job ahead of you, right? Because these folks are hearing all of this. They should never speak to me because I boast about the basement. I just love the basement. And so they're going to say, hey, why can't I get a job in the basement like Lisa? So we're going to have to think about what makes them motivated, what makes them tick, what we can do to get them jazzed. And that sometimes is individualized. Sometimes it's not this blanket statement where we could say everybody would be happier with this. Sometimes it's a lot more of an individualized effort to find out what each person needs. And then the other side of it is sometimes people are going to leave, right? Sometimes it's so strong for them that they're going to leave, but we'll find other people out there who are going to fit the bill for you. And so sometimes just realizing it's okay if some people leave, that's okay. But we're going to get into more strategies for you in a minute. But I really thank you for raising that. So,
and I'm sorry, Lisa, there's one more question from Erica. I know we have to keep moving. So Erica, if you could make it quick, that would be great.
I will. And respectfully, I disagree. At some point as nonprofits, we have to talk about the salary and the wage differences. Just because we have passion for what we do does not mean we can't pay equitable wages. It is hard as nonprofits because every dollar goes into our mission. But we have a lot of staff that are working in nonprofits in Connecticut that aren't making living wages. And how can we be attractive support what we have to do when we are discounted that we don't need to make a CEO wage or a living wage when we're performing the same services and tasks that our government is performing, and those workers are getting paid with awesome benefits, and that CEOs of large companies are paying, and we are doing that work. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think at some point, not here and not today, but that absolutely has to be addressed.
So Erica, I just want to acknowledge that my DMs blew up when you started talking, right? So the chat just went crazy with yes, 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 Erica. Erica is queen. Absolutely. I see it all here. Here's the thing. On this call today, I would love to be able to say, raise wages. I don't know that all of you that are on the call right now have the authority to do that, have the wherewithal to do that. I encourage you that your organizations need to look at those things, need to evaluate where can we make sure that we're within the ballpark for some folks. But for our session here today, since I don't, and maybe I'm wrong, but since I don't feel like you all have control necessarily over that, I want to really focus on the things that you can do as a leader in your organization to make those that are working for you feel valued. That's really where I'm going with that. So I agree with you. I'm behind you on that. And I like that you said that this, maybe not today, maybe not in this session. I think it's another conversation to have. And I don't want you to think I'm discounting you, but yes, 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 yes. So, yeah, so a lot of you are chatting in your experiences about losing people, and I get it. And listen, look at the top reasons here. So this is the state of Connecticut nonprofit sector survey. I'm going to just blow it up for you a little bit so that you can see the top three. Pay was too low was number one. But I also want to point out to you that no opportunities for advancement was tied in the number range here. And so that's important to understand. And then look at the third one here, felt disrespected at work. So do we have control over respect at work? Probably as leaders, we do. Do we have control over advancement opportunities? Maybe not in the traditional way, but in a creative way, we probably do. Do we have control over the pay? Well, I'm going to leave that answer for you to answer on your own. I don't know that necessarily. You may or you may not. So that's where we're going here. Some of the others that you have here are childcare issues is the number 4 factor here. Not enough flexibility to choose when to put in your hours. The benefits weren't good, and we're going to talk about benefits in a minute. You wanted to relocate to a different state, too many hours, overworked, too few hours. That's interesting. And we're going to dive into disrespected at work in a little bit. I can't answer for what they said, but I have some ideas around it. So we'll talk about that. And then the very last one here is employer required a COVID vaccine. So these are interesting. There was also a narrative written, interviews with the CEOs who participated. And this is pretty interesting here. It says several leaders who were interviewed experienced high turnover during the pandemic for reasons beyond compensation. One learned that the staff were changing careers because of the pressure of direct service and the added burden it placed on what they were dealing with personally. This is sort of speaking to what we were talking about before. The people who are forced to still be in the public were feeling nervous about their own health and their stress levels about the environment that we were in and their personal stressors. Other reasons for resignations were due to the fear of being infected or the challenges of learning new technology. I don't think that one was talked about enough. Is we went remote and some people had no idea how to Zoom, how to use the chat platform, they just pick up the phone in their worlds. And the technology that our organizations had might not have even been enough to support what we were asking people to do. So that's another area of concern there. Tensions also rose when some staff were able to work remotely while others had to be in the office. Some resignations were attributed to the fact that individuals needed to be home, given their family responsibilities. Leaders attempted to mitigate the Great Resignation by providing retention bonuses or giving raises outside of the traditional annual rate. And that's not really happening anymore. And so we might be seeing people leaving because they stayed long enough to get all of that, and now they're not getting that anymore. So yeah, lots of challenges, and here we are. So the challenges that we are faced with retaining this talent, the lack of monetary resources, generational differences, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Poor management or not feeling disrespected is part of that. The COVID, post-COVID, and then I'm going to ask you for some others, but I want to read in the chat here. Anna says, I left once. I noticed there were no more advancement opportunities for me. I felt that regardless the enthusiasm and regardless of the earning the master's degree, I couldn't demonstrate my capabilities. I was seen as the Spanish secretary who was good at her job and without experience to perform a managerial job. So Anna, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You can answer or not answer. If I were to ask you, and I want everyone to think about, after we read what Anna wrote, think about how you would feel if this was your situation, but does that feel like the category of disrespect? So I know that you categorized it as no more advancement opportunities, but I feel like this might be a dotted line to no advancement and also some disrespect with who you are and what your skill level is. So you can answer in the chat or take yourself off if you want to talk, but I want everyone to think about that because that's really what I'm thinking here.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I am Ana Maria Alvarez. I worked so many years for a public schools. I worked there from the bottom, being a paraprofessional, assistant secretary, executive assistant, always trying to better myself in my career. And I came already from my country with business administration background. It was hard for me to demonstrate my experience because I was from another country. And my resume had waitressing job, paraprofessionals, assistant. But I really wanted to do what I love to do. So regardless of going and spending my money on master's degree, I tried three times in advancing as a benefit coordinator, as a HR specialist, as HR human resources in the same company. So they knew me for so many years and I couldn't. I didn't know. It's not that I felt disrespected. I felt like worthless. It didn't matter all my efforts. It didn't matter the high performance that I demonstrated throughout all those years for the company. I knew that it was time for me to move and start from zero in another company. And I have been so blessed for the past 5 years. I work for a nonprofit school and I am in charge of the business. I do all the finances. I do all the HR. I only have an accounting assistant who helps me with accounts payable, and everything else is on me. So I have, I feel successful in that area, but when that happened to me, yeah, I felt like worthless,
Yeah,
that was my experience. Yeah.
so Anna, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm sorry you had to go through that, but I want to read you something that Steve said a little while ago in the chat, and I feel like maybe it was the right time for you. So he says when someone leaves for the right reasons, I think it's important to celebrate that to a certain degree. Retain that former employee as a champion of your cause, not as someone lost. And that's a really important thought, because sometimes people do leave. Sometimes people need to go somewhere else to spread their wings and grow. And I feel maybe that's what happened for you, and it happened for a reason. Yeah, so thank you so much for sharing that, because I appreciate it. And it's meaningful. It's meaningful. Sometimes people have to go to grow. Karen, I love that. Yeah. And Anne is saying Anna's experience should also be examined through an equity lens. And I agree. Yeah. How people leave matters just as much as why people stay. Yeah, for sure. So again, I said I'm going to say let's leave pay out of it. And I don't want to trigger anyone. We know, Erica, we got it. But we're going to leave pay out of it for today, and maybe we'll have a discussion on this at another time. But let's think about how we can support career advancement by creating those opportunities for growth. How can we do that? Some examples here: take a personal interest in employee career goals. What does that look like? How can we take a personal interest in employee career goals? What can you do there? It's very simple.
Go ahead, Erica.
I'm an association person, so there are associations for everything that have great meetings. Even Hartford Foundation for Public Giving has some of the best education out there. But to get their career goals and their career path and be that connector that can connect them. I know we're talking about retention, but if you produce quality people and they are stolen from you by someone else in the same, another association, I think you have to remember you did a really good job with that person to give them that growth opportunity.
Yeah.
So get involved in your associations for your profession, whether it's meeting planning or education, all of those.
I love that advice. Yes. And there's a lot of great resources out there for people to seek and for you to share with those that work for you. The answer that I was really looking for was ask. Very simple. Ask. What do they want? What are their career goals? Have those conversations, and don't just have those conversations at the performance evaluation time. It should be something that we're talking about often with our employees. Promote training and development, both internal and external, encouraging mentoring, encouraging job shadowing, encouraging people to see what else our organization has to offer. Rotate employee roles. Another great tactic here to make people feel like they're learning the business, they're learning the organization, the ins and outs, the nuance. Create a succession planning program. Create a path for people, right? And it's not always up and down. It's not always this climbing the ladder. We can have goals that are going across. Sheena says, asking them what their goals are, offering training, expanding their responsibilities that may align with their goals and the agency. This lets employees know you believe in their abilities. But before we do all of that is the word ask. We have to know what their goals are. We have to know what they're going to school for, or what they went to school for, or where they want to be. That old question of where do you see yourself? It's important. It's an important question. Let's do our poll number 3. And this is sort of a prequel to what we're going to talk about next. So you don't have much information here. I just want you for your gut. What generation do you associate with the most? Let's hear what you have here. We got to get to like 95% participated, folks. Go ahead. Xenial, says Aaron. We're at 81. Let's go. Let's go. We can do it. We got a lot of Gen Xers out there. I'm going to share these results in just a minute. So some of you are identifying with one that I don't even have on here, right? So the Xenial is the late stage Gen X crossover point. Jessica's identifying with that as well. So we're going to go ahead and end this. We're at 85. We'll be okay. For the first time in history, we probably have maybe five generations in our workforce, and that's a lot to deal with because we are different. We are definitely different. We have those traditionalists from 1925 to 1945. They don't really like change. They like the same old, okay? They are resistant to change. They are interested in structure and rules. And if it's not broken, we're not going to fix it. We have our baby boomers from 46 to 64. They're a little bit more cautious about change, but they can go with the flow. They're like not an early adapter, but they can get there with some time, but it takes time. We have our Gen Xers, 65 to 1980. Listen, these are the latchkey kids. They grew up in a time where they needed to be flexible. Their parents were working. They challenge the rules. They like change. They see change as an opportunity. Our millennials or Gen Yers from 1981 to 2000, they need flexibility. It's not just that they can be flexible, but they need it. They're fluid, they're independent, they want change. And if we go to our Gen Zers, they're even that to a heightened level, 2001 to 2020. They challenge the authority. They are motivated by purpose. They believe in activism. Their values have to align with the work that they're doing. They will challenge you if your values are not their reality, right? So these are important differences to know about when, and I think we're sharing the results. These are important differences to know about when we're thinking about who we're working with and how we retain them and how we have conversations with them and how we interact and what their behavior styles are given their generation. So if we're trying to retain someone who is a baby boomer, we're going to have to tread lightly when we're introducing change to them. We're trying to retain them. We want to make sure that we give them time to get onto that new technology, maybe that they're working on, as opposed to the Gen Z person, right? Who wants to know, what are you doing? What does it mean to the world? And how are we going to do that? How are we going to be better? How, those kinds of questions, they're challenging it all the time. Did we share the results? Because I feel like I hit share twice. Did you all see the results out there on the screen? Yes? Okay, I'm seeing heads shaking, yeah. Good. Okay, so our generational differences have to come into play. We talked a little bit about COVID here. There is absolutely a new set of work expectations out there. And I think we did a good job of kind of articulating this before. People have greater opportunity for movement when there's remote work. We don't care where people are living in some instances. Now, Janet's going to argue with me and say, listen, Lisa, I told you, we never went remote. We're still here. It matters to us. But I want you to think about it. You might be working with people who are having these challenges as well, externally, right? So just be aware of that. We want to seek work that supports our life, which is pretty interesting. We used to work and then fit our life in, and now we're living our life and making sure that our work is fit in to what we are doing in our world. So some of the expectations that employees have at this point: flexible work schedules, that hybrid environment, benefit requirements. So let's talk for just a minute about what you think we mean by benefit requirements. And I think someone put this up earlier in the chat. Tuition reimbursement is a very big deal. My husband works in nonprofit. He used to work at Teachers College at Columbia. And in February, he took a job at Montefiore Hospital. And so won't you know that my daughter is a college freshman? And when he worked at Columbia University, we got this tuition reimbursed, like free tuition up to a certain amount. And then he changed jobs to a hospital. What is he thinking, right? What is he thinking? He worked there for all those years and we're not getting that benefit anymore. But I digress. So benefit requirements, what do we mean by that? What do we mean by that? Where can we be creative? Anyone have any ideas here? Flex time, I love that. Flex time is awesome. Health and wellness benefits. You know, something as simple as an app to track your steps or an app to free exercise, things along those lines. Let's see what you all having here. Vacation time. Yes, a random day off for a job well done. Unlimited time off, financial support for plan design on group health plans. Yes, absolutely. These are great. No employee only coverage, premiums for health and dental insurance. Yes, increased benefits. Yes. We need training opportunities. We need technological advancements so that people have the tools to do their job. Health and wellness benefits for sure. Flex time I'm seeing here, you know, professional development, PTO, retirement plan. I want to move away from employee only coverage. Yeah, chair massages, fun staff day. Yeah, so we need to think, we don't have to be so broad. We want to bring it down. You know, a lot of times companies were building these really elaborate work environments where we had ping pong tables and we got, you know, free snacks and things. But if we're not in the office, for some of us, that's going to be an issue. But if we are in the office, maybe some of those kinds of things, places where people could wind down and relax. Someone says we did chair massages and it was very appreciated by the staff. Thank you. We want to be creative in that. Our next topic here is lack of respect. And some of you are asking, well, what do you think that means? Well, what do you all think that means? What kind of issues do you think lack of respect? So people left their jobs in the third category, the third highest category, because they felt lack of respect. What do you think that means? What kind of categories are we focused on there? Talking down to staff, minimizing employee concerns. Oh, this is a powerful one, Joanne. Seeing others getting promoted and you still staying where you are, not being heard or seen. A lack of cultural and ethnic awareness. Microaggressions, absolutely. Poor communication. Not recognizing contributors or contributions. Someone says, I came into a bad situation within the organization. The staff felt very, quote, under thumb. That makes me feel icky. I don't like that term. I don't like that term. It's a good one, but I don't like it. A disconnect between senior leadership team and other staff. Yes, so that kind of hierarchy feeling. Yes, micromanaging. Yes, lack of transparency. So powerful. Lack of communication, belittling the staff, microaggressions, all of this, lack of autonomy, favoritism. So busy completing management tasks versus supporting staff. You know what, Erica? The job of the leader is the hardest job ever because you have a job and you also have another job and you probably have a few more jobs, but we're being asked to do our job and manage people. And it's such a hard position to be in. So I recognize that. So let's talk about, I think the lack of respect part comes along with, you've heard the term, people don't leave a company or an organization, they leave their manager, right? That's been an old adage that we've heard for a really long time. And I read an article recently that was saying that that wasn't true. It was sort of disputing it. But what the point of their article was is that if you have strong leadership, the manager matters less. And so I think it's nuanced there, right? So the direct manager might not be very good at their job, but some people will stay if their leadership is doing a good job of sharing the big picture, of sharing the mission, of sharing the goals, right? And Sheena's agreeing here, leadership matters. And so I think there's nuance there to understand the difference between leadership and management. We still want to be good managers, and communication is such an important part of that. When we say, how do we know our employees' goals? We ask them, that's part of communicating, right? Someone here says, I considered leaving, but I stayed because of support of the outside of their individual manager. Yeah. So it's important for employees to have a job where they can make an impact. Generationally, we're seeing that. And as those younger generations where this is a motivator for them are coming in, we want to make sure we're making that correlation. Now, some might argue with me, hey, Lisa, we're a nonprofit. Our employees come and work for us because they care. I want you all to be 100% aware that they may have a passion for the work that you're doing, for the agency that you are, and for the programs that you support. They also might have passions in other areas. And we want to recognize that as well. We want to give them the opportunity to volunteer somewhere. Maybe that's a good benefit, because maybe they're doing their work with you and they love that, but maybe they have another cause that they want to participate in. Social responsibility awareness is on the rise. People want to work for an organization whose values reflect their own. People are looking for their organization to support efforts that support good corporate citizenship. And I know the term corporate citizenship feels weird in a nonprofit, but again, people have other interests. We also might have people in the accounting department who took the job because it was a job in accounting, and they might not have the passion. They might understand it and they might care about it, but it might not be why they came to you. And then our last bullet here is talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And the idea of feeling disrespected sometimes can come from this area. If we don't have an organization where we have some clear understanding about what our initiatives are in this realm, or, you know, I can remember way back 2 years when George Floyd was killed. And leaders in organizations were reaching out to my organization as an HR consultant and saying, we know we have to address this with our employees. We have employees who are feeling very affected by what they're watching on the news. What do we say? How do we say it? And how can we make sure our employees know that we care about diversity, and we care about equity, and we care about inclusion? So we want to keep that in our minds as well. We should be examining our comfort level. When it comes to the idea of support, disrespect, let's examine our own behaviors. Let's examine how we go about diversity, how we go about communicating with individuals. What is our behavior style? And understand that the way that we treat people might not be how they want to be treated, right? You all know the golden rule. The golden rule says, treat others the way you want to be treated. I'm a proponent of the platinum rule. The platinum rule says treat people the way they want to be treated. It means you have to consider them as an individual and understand what makes them tick, and we'll be better off with our communication efforts there. So there is a new trend here, and it's trying to find out why people stay. Here are some ideas. People stay because they're satisfied. Organizations that score higher on employee engagement surveys are likely to have more satisfied employees, clients, and partners. Engagement is really important. It feels like a buzzword these days, but it is very important to have engaged, satisfied employees. Retention is another place where we see this engagement. 44% of employees say that their number one motivator is having work that's engaging and enjoyable. And then we can go to that talent acquisition bucket. Engaged employees make great ambassadors. They help you attract and hire and even keep candidates. The happier people are, the happier people are. It's definitely a snowball effect. If we're thinking about employee engagement and we want to attach a definition to it, it says the extent to which one is emotionally, cognitively, and behaviorally invested in their work. Sometimes we hit only one or two of these, the emotionally and the behaviorally, and maybe we're not really challenging their thoughts. We want to strive for engaging people on all three of these levels. It's really talking about how we feel, what we think, and how we act. That's what this focus is for. We want to prioritize engagement, on-site, remote, hybrid, regardless of how we're working, the core principles of engagement remain the same. Certainly those remote workers are at a higher risk for becoming disengaged. They might feel a little disconnected, but everyone has to make better use, regardless of the environment, of these digital channels that we've been introduced to. We have to get better at our internal communication applications, whether it be chat features, video conferencing, document sharing. The leader-led approach is needed to create engagement. What do you think that means? What is the leader-led approach? What are we saying there? Jessica?
I think we have to kind of give permission and model it for the employees, because we can't just expect them to come up with it ourselves. And then, I've seen a lot of leaders that if you're trying to engage something, you're not doing the work. So, you have to give them the permission and model it and understand it so that it becomes part of the organization.
Yeah, I love the idea of modeling it. And listen, people look for others for cues on how to behave at work. And they really look at leaders for that. And so you have to model the behavior, you have to model the engagement. Something as simple as if we say we'd like everyone to have their cameras on and the leader has their camera off, that's very simple. It doesn't seem like a connection there, but I've seen it, people do it. The leader-led approach, you got to walk the walk, you got to talk the talk and create those engagement opportunities. You can't be too busy to engage. And sometimes we fall into that. We want to ask for help and encourage involvement. What that means is sometimes we need to involve others. We need to involve them. If you've ever said something like, oh, I'll just do it myself. By the time I teach them how to do it, I could have it done. Erase that sentence from your mind. We want to have people involved. Take that moment and take that time in the moment. It'll help you in the long run. Pulse check-ins, lunch dates, those things that we've been missing. We want to prioritize that engagement. This is a new environment and we want to see that happening in a safe way. Onboarding. We have a lot of slides here on onboarding and I think they're really important. The studies are showing that onboarding is not paperwork. And a lot of companies, organizations, agencies have been treating onboarding like the chance to get all the paperwork in and fill out all those forms. And that certainly is part of it. It's a necessity, but onboarding as a whole needs to be more than a one-day event. I mean, it could take as long as 6 months to onboard somebody, and that's okay, because there's different levels to onboarding. This says the first weeks of an employee time with an organization are critical. If you fail to onboard your employees effectively, they will not be comfortable with the new work environment, increasing their chances of switching organizations. Onboarding practices, best practices, a personalized welcome from all different levels within the organization, not just from you, their direct supervisor. Contact details of their peers. That sounds like a no-brainer, but sometimes we just let them go and they don't know where to find the information. They don't know who the players are. They don't, we give them a directory. Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not. We tell them where to search for information. Maybe it's okay, maybe it's not. We need to pay attention to that. Details about their roles and responsibilities. We should all be reviewing job descriptions and making sure that they're up to date and making sure that they make sense for this individual. Sometimes we're working off of really old job descriptions, and we just talk to the person in the interview about the changes, but they need to see that. They need to have that. They need the details. Information detailing customs and organizational norms. Someone's asking if you'll get the slides. Sure, I'll send you the slides. Absolutely. Yeah, so we need those customs. What do we do? How do we operate? What are, do we all eat lunch at our desks, or do we go to the conference room, or do we eat in the cafeteria? What are those things that make people feel like they belong? Someone says, I've been thinking about setting up a buddy system for new hires. I love it. And if I can make a suggestion, a buddy system where you rotate through departments of buddies. So you get to learn. It's almost like a job shadowing thing, but you have your main buddy who's your go-to person. You'll build great relationships that way. Some statistics for you. 82%. A great employee onboarding can improve employee retention by 82%. That was my alarm telling me that I need to get going. 82% is a huge number. If you're better at it, you're going to increase your employee retention. 88% of organizations don't onboard well. What does that say? What does that say? It says we're not doing what we could. We're not doing what is required to retain our employees. 58% of organizations say their onboarding program is focused on process and paperwork. And while I understand as an HR professional that is a necessity, that cannot be the focus alone. 70% of team members who had an exceptional onboarding experience say they have the best possible job. And this slide and this statistic alone should be reason enough for you to examine your onboarding process, examine the opportunities that you might have, and increase that. We want to focus on training, growth, development. We want to make sure under this training, growth, and development category that we're creating learning opportunities. It's not always sending someone externally who's good at something. Let's partner those people up. Let's share our skill sets. Let's share our knowledge base. Leadership opportunities. That's really important to give people some responsibilities in the leadership world. They could lead meetings. They can be project leads. We can delegate some of our work that we are already feeling so overwhelmed with. Let them take some of that on and have them grow in that way. Creating shadow opportunities is another area here. It's an exploration of alternative roles, alternative careers. It really buys you a lot on the employee benefit side. Our last and final poll here, we're going to go ahead and throw that up. We're going to talk about stay interviews. Stay interviews. So we're going to see this. We're at 100% answered. We can go ahead and share those results. And only 2 of you are using stay interviews. Some of you have never heard it. Some of you want to introduce it because you've heard about it. So stay interviews versus exit interviews, really important here. We have some questions for you that you can ask in a stay interview. A stay interview is a much more informal, conversational tone. It's not the formal exit interview to find out why people are leaving. It is an informal, formal conversation to learn why people are staying, what's going right. So I have some questions up here. What's the most exciting part of your job? What do you look forward to each day? What are you learning here? And what do you want to learn going forward? When's the last time you thought of leaving and what prompted it? And what can I do to make your job better for you? We're going to see who should ask those questions, and some of these questions might not be applicable, but if you're the direct manager, that's certainly a great question there. We look here at our stay interview versus our exit interview slide. Again, informal, conversational. The person has to really feel safe in the environment to be able to speak freely. And so if you and your subordinate don't really have a great relationship, you might not be the right one to do the stay interview. Maybe it's HR, maybe it's another manager, maybe it's someone else. Stay interviews are so impactful. They show your employees that you care about their thoughts, their feelings, their experiences regarding their work. Trust is another great word here. It helps you to build trust. It will increase the communication between you and your employees. It allows for that mutual conversation to happen. We said earlier, we want to know people's goals. We have to ask them. If we are scheduling stay interviews, it gives us that opportunity to have these important conversations. It gives you viable information needed to make positive change within the workplace, and it will provide you with patterns and data related to employee turnover. It causes some self-reflection. I do want to caution everyone, if you go the route of stay interviews and you learn information about your employees, and then you don't do anything with the information that you learned, the stay interview is not only useless, but detrimental. So if you're going to incorporate stay interviews, you have to commit fully to hearing and addressing the things that employees tell you during those interviews. And if you can't make changes, you have to explain that and have those conversations, because otherwise it's going to just be an exercise that felt like a waste of time for that employee. Okay, before we go into our breakout rooms, I just want to see if we have any questions, comments. I love this. Melanie's thinking maybe we won't do just complete stay interviews, but I'll incorporate it into one-on-one meetings with staff. I love that idea. How often do you recommend stay interviews be done? So here's the thing. Sometimes these conversations are had during the appraisal process, and we should still be having conversations about goals and where do you see yourself and what do you want to do and what's your career path and those kinds of things. We want to do this probably 6 months after someone starts, and then maybe twice a year thereafter, plus the end of year review time where we're going to have this kind of conversation. But also it's going to depend on your environment, right? So if you see that people are getting antsy and some people are starting to leave, you might want to start to have those conversations more frequently. Any other questions before we hit these breakout rooms? So just a little housekeeping on breakout rooms. You're going to be placed into the breakout rooms. When you see the prompt on your screen, click join. I'm going to ask that within each room, you select a spokesperson and a scribe, someone who's going to take notes for the group. We're going to spend 5 minutes in that breakout room, and then we're going to come back together and we're going to discuss it. Up on the screen and in the chat are the questions that we're asking. So group number 1, when you see it, you'll see your title there. We're asking you to all to discuss best practices for health and wellness initiatives, habits, and practices. What are you doing? What can you do? What have you heard about? Group number 2 is going to discuss engagement. How can we make sure that engagement is a focus? How do we increase employee engagement? What are those best practices? What are we doing? What do we know? What have we heard about? What do we want to incorporate? Group number 3, how can we be creative in the benefits area? I know we spent a little bit of time there in the chat, but what are your ideas? What are we thinking about there? And then last, group 4 is going to discuss best practices for creating a culture that supports open communication and accessibility. I'm going to pop into each room just to eavesdrop, to hear that you're on the right track. When you see me pop in, if you have a question, let me know, and we can go ahead and open up those rooms. And then, so I just want to get my right view. So folks, I know we are close to the end of our time. What I'm going to ask is that everybody just, each group, put in the chat your number 1 idea for your topic so that we can all see that and share. There was a question earlier whether we would share the slides, and we will, whether we would share the chat transcript, and we certainly will do that too, so you can see everyone's ideas. We'll alter the chat transcript with there were some personal shares out there, and we'll make sure that that isn't included so that, you know, it doesn't get in the hands of the enemy. I don't know. But we want to make sure that you all feel safe in this environment. So go ahead, throw it up in that chat. Let me know what you were thinking. And if anyone has something really important that they want to share in terms of, where did my chat go? There you go. That's interesting. Someone else was having that problem earlier, and now I am. If anyone wants to come off mute and talk about something that you found really insightful, I know that many of you have to go. I'm going to stay on the line for our questions after. So if you need to hop off, we understand that. If you can stay and want to ask questions, that's fine as well. But here in the chat, I'm seeing, thank you so much for your answers here. Health, mental, nonprofits have resources, perhaps nonprofits in arts and culture might want to tap into. So maybe a sharing of some resources there. I love that idea. You know, I know that in our organization, we have clients who will give us quote unquote freebies that we can gift to our employees, you know, and that's a nice share for all of you. Maybe if you have something where you can let people come and visit and do something like that. Increasing engagement, events offsite. I like that idea. Social events outside, offsite, make people feel connected. I love it. This is a great one for having different staff members run each staff meeting their own way, encourage them to get creative with the layout, you know, really stressing to them, it's not my way, it's your way. So you don't have to mirror what I always do. Do it the way you think it should be done. That really will empower people. I love that idea. Folks, I know that many of you have to go and we are at our time. So in the chat, there's a lot of great information here. I'm sorry for those of you that I did not get to, but I want to thank you all for being great participants. Thank you for sharing your morning with me. Good luck, everyone. And check out the recruitment. I'm doing a little plug here, shameless. Check out the recruitment session that we're going to have coming forward. My colleague Tyrone Taylor is going to do it there. They'll be closely related and sort of woven in there. So I love summer Fridays are a great idea. If you have to go, go. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to stay, stay. Oh, I love this. For the folks who took notes, we'll forward the list so they can be compiled and distributed to the group. We can send out a note on that one. So each group had a note taker. We can absolutely do that. We have the survey up there. I put you all up there. That's a great idea. Engagement provides staff with information and updates. Love that. So with that, I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions. You can put them in the chat or unmute. I'm happy to hear from all of you.